Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out on this drizzly, dreary Seattle day. I am Brandon Ivie. I'm the Associate Artistic Director here at Village Theater, and this is our happy hour series. We've been doing this while we've all been quarantined for the last couple weeks. I think this might be our fifth one. I'm here in my parents' office in Issaquah. And my guest here today is a new-ish friend of mine from the last couple years since I've gotten to know him well. But our Village audiences have known of him for quite a while. He has been a director of new works and main stage musicals and plays for us. And he recently, about 2 years ago, I think it's been 2 years, has become our illustrious artistic director. So please give a nice warm welcome to Jerry Dixon.
Hey, I feel the love already. I feel it. Thank you, Brandon.
Hi, Jerry. How
What
are
a
you?
nice introduction. I'm loving
My pleasure. Well,
yeah,
you're
it's not drizzly here in New York. It's actually pretty
yeah,
good.
I was just gonna say you're actually hanging out in New York, aren't you?
I am. Mostly in my apartment, not really New York proper, because you can't.
Right, yeah. Because you sort of split, not sort of, you split your time between Seattle, Issaquah, and
Agreed. Yes. Depending on the need.
Yeah, how has that been? Like that's quite the, I mean, I did it for a long time as well.
Right, of course, yeah, that's right. It has its challenges, but I'm a pretty good air traveler, so that's a plus. I don't get really frightened on airplanes. In fact, I am a really good sleeper. I get a lot of work done.
It took me a long time to be able to sleep on an airplane.
I think it's key. You've got to learn how to relax and so that you can wake up on the other side refreshed. Yeah. And I'm also not very sensitive to the time zone change, so it's a win-win for me that way. And then you get to live in two pretty spectacular places in this country. So nothing wrong with that, and two really great theater communities. So
and we'll get to
the guy.
Yeah, and we'll get to part of the reason why you're in New York later in the program.
Oh yeah.
But thank you everyone for joining us. If this is your first time, we're going to spend a little bit of time just me and Jerry chatting. But throughout this happy hour, if you want to comment on anything that we're chatting about, please feel free. There's a comment. Gosh, I don't know. It's over there, or down there.
Are these comments usually nice, Brandon? Are they usually?
Yes, please, only nice comments. Although I don't know, it'd be interesting to have one that stirred the pot.
Up to snarky, I'll allow.
Yeah.
Beyond snarky, no.
But feel free to shoot some comments in there. We'll also do a question and answer session at the end of this. So put any questions that come up throughout this, either about what we're talking about, or if you have other questions about anything Jerry Dixon related, put those in the comments section. Jerry has agreed to answer just about everything.
Just about everything.
Just about. We'll see if
anything makes me squirm, I'll let you know.
Yeah. So, Jerry, one thing that I think a lot of, because you've we'll talk about this a little bit, but you've been directing at Village for I think 12 years.
Yeah, at least.
So there's a number of artists that have worked with you over the decade plus that you've been at Village, but I think a lot of folks don't know your story before Village, but even before. You were quite a well-known actor on Broadway for a number of years, but even before that, I know little bits and pieces about your story of how you got to New York and sort of where you started and how you got there, but I wonder if you would share a little bit about that part of your journey.
Wow. Let me make sure I don't revise anything so people don't come on my facts. I was pretty much raised in a community theater in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And it's one of those things where you don't realize how fortunate you are. The Kalamazoo Civic Theater had a youth program for theater, and it was basically my summer camp. And there I learned to do what I do now. And the most amazing part of that is I did not know how much they prepared me until I went out into the world and started competing against people who went to university and had careers way before mine, and started competing with these folks and realized that, wow, I'm still here, even though that was a cattle call with 400 people. So I must have learned something along the way. But it was a wonderful theater, and did quite a few productions there. But mainly it was about learning the craft. We learned how to build sets, sew costumes, do makeup, just not for just ourselves, but like how to do art makeup on different actors. We learned how to light. We learned the entire thing. I even did my first incidental music for a production of Children's Hour there.
Oh wow!
It was a wholesale learning experience there, and got me ready for New York. Unbelievably.
Yeah, and then so how did
Michigan?
How did the New York piece of that happen?
Oh well, I did have a little detour. I did Ivie, USA, which is in Tennessee, at the site of the second Grand Ole Opry.
Wait, what is that? What did you say?
So Opryland, USA, if you can imagine, Opryland is like Disney without the rides. I mean, they had a couple of rides, but it was really what was called a show park. And they had like 19 stages, and they had different music in each venue. So I did a thing called I Hear America Singing, which was a sort of catalog of the American songbook from the 20s all the way up to the current time, which was at that point mid 80s. So the biggest thing that we ended with Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, with all the women coming out in the dolly wig and the getup, and so that's how current we were. And I get to do the policeman in the Village of People, so that was interesting. And then I also, the next year I went back to Opryland and I did a show called Showboat, but it wasn't the Showboat. It was on a fake showboat that actually didn't move. It was kind of, what do you call it? Not actually directed the show, not parked. It was docked. It was docked.
Okay. But was it at one point a real showboat?
No, this was a stage. It was an art. Basically, it was all dressing room behind the wall. That's what it was. And it was like this deck, and you perform songs of the time, like Dixie folk songs, and at 17, I was singing Old Man River, which was ridiculous. And I actually sang Old Man River when I was 14 at the Kalamazoo Civic Youth Theater.
Oh no!
Yeah.
This is funny.
Yeah, my voice was low then. My voice is lower than it is now.
Frank Stillwagner performed.
Oh, that's right. I did know that a little.
Frank is our. Oh gosh, I'm going to get his new title wrong. Our director of development, but his new title is director of.
Let's just call him expanded director of development, because he's doing many things. I should know that.
I'm going to have to chat with Frank about that when we get back in the office someday.
Yeah. So it was, and then years later, about a couple of years after I left Opryland and didn't go back, they actually built a real showboat so that they could go up and down the river and actually do the show on the river.
There used to be a showboat at University of Washington here in Seattle.
Wow. And like a riverboat that people actually performed on.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a working showboat, and back in the I don't know the decade, maybe the 80s, but at one point they had to. It was one of the only working showboats in the country, and we also had the first theater in the round in the United States.
Wow!
And at a certain point, they only had the money to either save the showboat or save the theater in the round. And so they let the showboat go, and the theater in the round was called the Penthouse Theater, because it was on the penthouse of this building, and they literally took the penthouse off and like moved it and put it on the ground.
Oh wow!
But I always hear tales of the.
Wait a minute. So the theater was replaced the top, or they took the penthouse and it became the round lower? Like
the theater was on the top floor, and they just took the top floor and like moved it to where it is now.
I read a fascinating book by Caleb Carr called The Alienist, and it had a lot of New York theater history in it. And one of the things that I found fascinating is because of the summer months, and we didn't have air conditioning in the summer, a lot of theater was up on the top of roofs. They would move the summer season upstairs so that they could be open air theaters. So a lot of hotels had like open air theaters. One of the most famous ones was the Hippodrome. And you would go up there to these delightful shows, and the roof would retract, and there were trees and swimming pools up there.
Man, retractable. I've always dreamed of, like, if ever there's a moment when I'm involved in like a capital campaign for a new theater, I've always wanted to have a retractable roof on a theater, so that like during like breaks from tech or something, you'd be like, open the roof, and you can have like windows in the ceilings or something.
Well, you and I were talking about just a little briefly yesterday. We were talking about the shed. Remember we were talking about that in New York? And that is a retractable, and actually the wall, it's like the wall and the ceiling and another wall that actually retracts on a like a train track. It's one of the most amazing pieces of architecture. I haven't seen it retract yet. I can't wait until we get back to live theater and like actually see that thing do that. I would just pay just to see that, even without the show. But so Opryland, and then I went to New York. And the thing about going to New York, per usual, you usually go pretty much by yourself. You like, Peggy Sawyer. You go by yourself and like, but if you've done a season or two of Opryland, when you hit New York, you know about 300 people. So it's not like you're, a stranger in a strange land. So I did my second season at Opryland and went back to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and was thinking about what I want to do. And I was working at a department store called Gilmore's. And my boss, Irving Gilmore, called me up into his office. I went, oh my God, I'm being fired. I just knew it. I just knew I was going to be fired. Sits me down. And he said, young man, I saw you in Pippin the other day. I was doing.
Who did you play?
I was third clown from the right. And I went, yeah. And I went, this is really strange. And he said, I couldn't take my eyes off you. Now it's getting stranger because I was doing basically nothing. I was maybe juggling or something.
Yeah.
And he said, but I've seen you in other things too over the years. And I think you really want to do this for a living. I went, yeah, I'm thinking about it. He goes, well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I don't know why I'm making him sound like he's from like an old black and white film, but I'm sure he sounds much better.
He's almost sounding like Steve Tompkins, actually.
Tell you, yeah. Anyway, he told me that he'd been basically an angel for a few of the performers in the area. One of them was the late Marin Mazzie.
No way.
He sent to New York. And basically what he did for me and Marin, he wrote a check and said, see how far this takes you in New York. And all you owe me is a couple of postcards and not saying that I ever gave you this money. And I was like, wow. And it was substantial. So when I got to New York, I was able to concentrate on finding the things I wanted to do in the world of theater. So I was able to not go and do tons and tons of summer stock. I was able to stay in New York and find out this thing called the New Musical. And it's so funny, like when you're doing Pippin and you're doing The Sound of Music and Pajama Game, you never think, oh yeah, somebody had to create this.
Right.
You're not like, oh yeah, think of the idea, write it, produce it. So I really didn't. It really was not on my map, this whole concept of the New Musical. But when I got to New York, I heard about it. And I went, oh, I want in on that. But it was really hard to break it, really hard to break into it because there were millions of people in New York and thousands of actors. But because of the support that I got from the Gilmores, I was able to stay in New York and find that right show for me to do as a new work. So that was, Opryland, New York, new work. And then years and years and years later, I got a show called Maryland, which my agent talked me out of doing. She didn't think it was going to be any good, and she thought I should have a better Broadway debut. So she
Oh my gosh, you were supposed to be in Maryland?
Yeah.
Jerry, how have we not talked about this?
I was 24 years old, and it was going to be another 6 years before I got the chance to be on Broadway again. But boy, was she right. And boy, was it worth the wait, because the show was Once on This Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, Maryland is like a famous Broadway plot. Like, not famous, infamous.
Yeah.
Did not like. I remember when Smash, the TV show Smash, came out.
Mm-hmm.
It was so funny because the show is about the creation of this musical Bombshell, which is about Marilyn Monroe's life. And it's like, well, they already tried it once and it didn't go very well.
Man.
So Once on This Island.
Yeah.
I'm going to geek out for a second.
Okay.
Because you were one of like two voices that I like obsessed with when I was a performer. It was you and Brooks Ashmanskas.
Oh, Brooks.
How random is that to say that now?
That's so great.
Brooks was in Songs for a New World.
Yeah.
That's where he was like singing. Now Brooks is like a character guy. He still has this crazy voice.
Mm-hmm.
But he's known for like character roles. And you on Once on This Island, like I obsessed over Some Girls and like it's such a weird, and it was very weird when I first met you. I was like, this is the guy from Once on This Island and the guy from Tick Tick Boom.
Yeah. I was at a piano bar in the Village, and I was singing Some Girls, and the bartender came up to me afterwards, and she goes, "You sound just like the guy who did it on the original Broadway." Yeah, that's yeah, okay, yeah. And I didn't even. I just.
That's such a Jerry Dixon response.
I thought that was
like, I am the guy.
But it was so sweet, and you know, it's one of my actor friends said, you know, the thing about theater songs is you fall in love with them like at first listen, and you go, wow, that is an amazing song. And when I went to my callback for Once on This Island, and Steve Flaherty said, come over here, the composer said, come over here and sing a few bars of this song that's in the show. And when I heard it, the only thing I could think is like, if I got this show, I would get to sing that song, because it was the melody is so surprising and haunting and like nothing I'd heard. And I'm like, wow, that is really something. And that was what I was fixated on. It's like, I get to sing that song. And then the last part of my callback, the only thing I had to do after reading a scene with LaChanze, who of course was T Moon, is Steve Flaherty played some calypso music, and Graciela Danielle, the director choreographer, said, just dance with LaChanze. And like, steps, like, no, just dance with her. And that's what we did for a minute. And they said, thank you.
Oh, I love that.
And then called me a few days later and said, you want this? Like, yes. It's like, oh, just like, and then when I got to sing that song every day, it was just it was an amazing thing. And I'll never forget recording that song because of finances and everything. As soon as people can be let go, because recording studios are very expensive and actors are very expensive in a recording studio. As soon as people were done, they let them go so that they could go home and stop being on the clock and stop paying them. So Some Girls is actually the only true solo in Once on This Island. It's the only song that only one person sings. There might be a solo where people sing an under pad or backups. So I was the last one left. And it was the end of the session. Everybody had gone home. Only the orchestra at RCA on 6th Avenue. Myself, the orchestra, Graciela Danielle, choreographer, director, Lynn and Steve, the writers. And Graciela said, let's turn off the lights like Barbra Streisand did when she recorded here. Turned down the lights in the studio. And I did a couple of takes of Some Girls. And I just like, it was one of the most amazing things.
And now, did you know LaChanze before Once on This Island?
I did not. I knew probably only one other person. One. I think I knew maybe Jerry McIntyre, who was my father in the show, Armand. So that was probably the only person I knew at the time.
What I love about Once in This Island, for those who don't know, we're talking about the Broadway production of Once in This Island, the original Broadway production, which
1990. Yeah, 1990. That's really.
Which started off Broadway at Playwrights Horizons and then transferred to Broadway.
We were also young. We had these little bodies and these really big heads.
It was like an arrival for so many people involved with that show. Like writers, Stephen Flaherty and Lynn Ahrens had some shows off Broadway, but this was their Broadway debut, and then this led them. Immediately after this, they did Ragtime and then Anastasia, and Seussical.
Yeah.
This was when LaChanze probably burst onto the scene.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
What an amazing, and it's truly my favorite show. I love Once in This Island so much. And it just had a very successful revival in New York. Did you see it in New York?
I never saw it in New York, and I was planning on seeing it in the Pacific Northwest because it was going to be in Oregon or Idaho. And I'll grab a friend and drive up there and finally see it. And look what happened. It just goes to show you got to seize the day.
Yeah.
Because I'm really sad that I didn't get to see that. But it was a wonderful experience, and one of those things that spoils you a bit because you think they're all going to be like that. Like I still, am friends with all 10 of those other cast members, and it's interesting that once you capture a chemistry, like with LaChanze and I, we've done several other productions together, and some of them opposite each other. I went on to do Five Guys Named Mo with Milton Craig Neely, who was in the original cast of Once in This Island. And just I've worked with a lot of them over many, many years, and it's just been an amazing time.
I love how beloved the show has become. And like when it opened, it was well reviewed, and people really it wasn't like it was like no one appreciated it. It was
very loved.
Yeah, it was loved at that time. But I always look at that year in the Tony Awards because it was a really tough year to decide what. There were tons of good things. It was Once in This Island. It was The Secret Garden.
Will Rogers Follies.
Which won. And so it's just like three of those shows are still sort of juggernauts in certain ways. Will Rogers doesn't get performed very much anymore.
But just imagine being the fortunate artist who got to see and maybe in a weekend to see LaChanze, Lea Salonga, and Daisy Egan. I mean, not to mention Rebecca Luker and Katie Huffman.
And Mandy Patinkin.
And Jonathan. Yeah, so many people.
Yeah.
It was a great year. And it was one of those things, like sometimes, you don't, I would say sometimes we sort of skip over those moments and we're not really present in them. And I can say with Once in This Island, I was able to really be present in that time. I knew it was special when it was happening. And that was really a gift to actually know that this is a special thing. And one of the things I'll never forget, we were rehearsing at the Atlantic Theater Company's theater space because they were on sort of a hiatus. And because of the part, I played Danielle Bozome. Once I stopped being a peasant, I was Danielle Bozome. So I wasn't in chunks of the middle parts of the show that had to do with Two Moon's family. So I would go away and I'd come back and see chunks of this amazing thing, coming to life. It's like, wow, that's beautiful. And the one thing that struck me is I walked in and they had staged the finale and then sort of plugged me into the end of it. And I remember getting to the part where the gods are sort of ushering Two Moon out of her natural life. I know. It was amazing. They're ushering her out of her natural life to her ascension, basically. And I thought, oh, well, how are they going to do this? And, Agwe, Agwe wraps her in a way. He hugs her. Papa Gay was gentle, who'd been like basically trying to kill her the entire show. Now he's gentle. Urzuli wrapped her in her love. And then the men, two strong, strapping men, pick LaShawne's up, this grown woman, and give her to Keisha Lewis, who was playing Asaka, and walk her upstage on a rake to become a tree. And just the image of that woman taking another woman to basically to become the legend of Timoon. I had to leave that rehearsal room too sweet because I was a mess. I was like, what is happening to all of us? And it was such a simple thing, but it said everything about the power of motherhood and womanhood. And it was way before its time, in that it wasn't like saying, look how woke we are. It was just Graciela, I think because she's from another culture, she's an Argentinian woman. I think that was so natural for her to think of that, where maybe an American director may not have thought of that. It's just not in their culture. And it was just beautiful. And one of the most striking moments I remember being part of, and also remember witnessing. It was just stunning. And you could tell what was happening to the audience when you'd see those shoulders, just like, what is happening? You start to vibrate.
I think it's like, to me, it's like the best 10 minutes in musical theater. That finale of Once in Silence.
It's powerful. It is really powerful and really hard to get through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably for everyone on every level with that show.
Yes.
Oh God, I just love that show. So, so you were a very successful actor for quite a long time in New York.
Yeah, show business has been really tremendously good to me.
But then you started directing.
Yeah.
And how did that begin? Like, I'm sure it started before you started directing at Village, but like, when did you get the directing bug?
Yeah, I think, I don't know about you, Brandon, but I think we all start that seed growing before it actually starts to be a thing. And I always was watching things in a global way even when I was doing my single part. I would sometimes stick around at lunchtime and see how something got fixed I knew was broken. It's like, I wonder how I would fix that. I would like sit in back and I learned to say nothing, sit back and be silent. And so I really got the bug watching some amazing artists who are also really great tacticians do what they do. And I learned almost everything I know in theater by watching artists who were way better than I was at the time do their thing, and asking questions and not being afraid to ask even what I thought might be a dumb question. I was always asking questions of like, why was that choice made? Or how did that happen? Like, I thought it was fascinating how I would see something that I felt was broken, and I would go to lunch and come back and it was fixed. I went, how did they do that? They knew it. They knew what was up. So it started really early for me. It started probably in my early teens, of like trying to look at the entire thing and why it works or why it doesn't work. And then around slightly before Once in This Island, I started to sort of dabble in university projects. There's always an actor wanting to do, a solo show, so there's always opportunities to do that. And I just kind of seized the bull by the horns and went with it, and then started to really, really dig in. And then I made a conscious effort, and it was one of those we had to, my husband and I had to have at the time we were not husbands because we know why, but at the time we had to have a family discussion because I really wanted to make the transition, but I knew. So yeah, you made the sacrifice. You see, the gold down the road, and stuck to it, and it's interesting in this time of when I first started acting, the internet didn't really even exist, And it was interesting to, once it did exist, to watch my hyphen change from actor, singer to actor, director to director, actor to director. And no life. And then I was reeled back to Broadway with If Then, and the hyphen came back.
What would you, if you could, what do you consider the first show you ever directed to be?
Wow, that is really interesting.
Because, like, would you consider like that cabaret that you helped a friend do at Don't Tell Mama?
No, because I had directed before that. I would consider the first show I ever directed was a kind of concert at Bucks County Playhouse.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was really. We had some couple of days of when we didn't perform, and we were performing. God, my history with Showboat, I can't believe it follows me around my whole career. I was in a production of Showboat in the ensemble.
Of the
actual Showboat. And Pat Paulson was Captain Andy. He was that comedian who ran for president. In like the 60s or 70s anyway. He was and he just wanted to work all the time. And he said, Jerry, could you put together a show that's like, you know, got some variety to it, so I can do some stand-up and really great singing and, you know, dancing and storytelling. And I said, yeah. So I put together a show, and we did it on Mondays and Tuesdays. And it was also dabbling into constructing something new, rather than something that was already in existence. And so that was my first sort of, you know, soup to nuts directing gig.
Oh, and how apropos that it was that you were doing Showboat when that happened, because that's what I'm going to bring up next. But if you are all just joining us, I'm here with Jerry Dixon, the artistic director at Village Theater, and we're asking him all about his life and his career and all things. And if you have any comments, please write them in the comment field, or questions. We're going to get to a question and answer session at the end. So write your questions down and we will get to them, I promise.
I see lots of comments on the right, but I'm not really going to look at them yet until you.
I like tracking them. I'm if you feel like you haven't been heard yet, I'm clocking you. And we'll get to them, I promise. So Jerry was just telling us about the first show he directed, which was on his off nights from performing in Showboat. And Showboat also happens to be the first main stage show that Jerry ever directed for us.
That's right. That came to be, well, first of all, I have to give credit to Brian Yorkie, who wrote Next to Normal with Tom Kitt. They're the ones who got me to connected with Village Theater in the first place, because I was developing a piece called Barnstormer about the aviator Bessie Coleman with the writers, and Brian and Tom knew of that, and they said, "Oh, would you be interested in doing any piece of the development at this place called Village Theater where Brian was working?" And they had developed some pieces of Next to Normal. And I went, oh, yeah, that'd be great. And so I came out and we just did a table read. We didn't even do the music. We just sat at a table. And I was just there for a couple of days. We did that. And then I came back a couple of months later, and we actually did a sort of not stage reading, but definitely music stands and did the score. And Lisa Estridge was actually a Village Theater favorite. She was Bessie Coleman, and Timothy Piguet was her brother Johnny, and also a Village Theater favorite. So that was my first introduction to Village Theater. And then Rob Hunt and I were chatting at the off-Broadway opening of Next to Normal in New York. And I didn't know at the time I was being played very cleverly. Rob was asking me questions about shows that I was interested in directing and or developing or whatever. And we started talking, and I would just go down the list like, yeah, I really like that show, but I don't think I have anything to add to it. He goes, well, what about this one? What about that? And little did I know he was doing some investigative work.
Yeah.
So a couple of months later, he called me and said, hey, remember we having that discussion about Showboat. And so we started talking about that. And so that's how that came to be. And I just couldn't be happier because that was just it's just wonderful company. Bob Dahlstrom.
What a first go out of the gate. My gosh, it's huge.
Yeah. Yes and no. And at first I thought so too. And I ran into Broadway director and choreographer Susan Stroman at a benefit. And it was before I said yes to directing Showboat.
And she had choreographed the How Prince Revival, right?
That's right. And I said, it's just so huge. She goes, well, what Hal and I discovered is actually a bunch of small little scenes that are put together into this large package, which is the Showboat frame. But when you really think about it, as far as speaking scenes, there's no more than 6 players in each speaking scene. It just happens to be very well constructed, and it makes you think it's this big thing. And the cleverness about that is also what Hal Prince does so beautifully when he does large scale work. He was so good at focusing on the action. Like Kiss of the Spider Woman is humongous when you think of it visually, but it essentially is about 2 people.
In a
yes. Showboat is essentially about an American family. And when you boil it down to that, it doesn't get so in your head, it doesn't get so big, and you're allowed, to just take yourself off the panic ladder and get down to work. And that's what you do. So it was an amazing time.
It was a great production.
Thank you.
I remember it was my first, not my first time, but first time ever, but first time seeing Keeman Ilika like really take a lead role in a professional theater. Man, her singing in that show was like remarkable.
Yeah. Brandon, you and I as directors, we know that one of the things that we hope for is the people walking in the room, because if they don't walk in the actor doesn't walk in the room that you need, it's like, oh no. And many actors will come up to us and say, thank you so much for giving me this role and giving me this chance. But we also go, thank you for walking in the room.
Yeah.
Thank you for having that talent that is just, it's so remarkable that you have to sit up and take notice. And so there's this relationship that feels like sometimes I know actors want to feel grateful, but at the same time, actors, you got to know your worth, because there was just no denying Cayman's talent. And it was just I could hear every note even before she sang them. I could imagine every note of that score in her voice.
It was remarkable. We have Cayman as a goddess. Yes, I agree. What is the name of the character? She sings "Can't Help Loving That Man."
Julie.
Thank you, Julie. Oh, she opens her mouth and you just go.
Yeah.
Everything stops.
In that scene, sometimes you have to what's called mock excitement from the chorus. When you have to go, oh yeah, you're so good. Because it's built into the story of this scene. Well, it is built into the kitchen scene where she first sings that song. But I can tell you, not one of the actors had to pretend to be excited.
Right. Oh my gosh!
That song. It was just yeah.
So you've gone on to direct a number of other things. You directed The Full Monty and a couple new musicals in a row, Take Me America and A Proper Place. And you've now been the artistic director. Am I right? 2 years?
It's going on 3. Yeah, it'll be year 3 in it'll hit June 6th.
Oh my gosh!
Yes,
it flies.
It's so quickly.
So what would you say is like your biggest surprise of joining the staff at Village and kind of like really immersing yourself in the community here in the Northwest?
My biggest surprise was at the beginning, and it still is how, and this might sound, I don't know if it sounds corny, but how shared the dream is. So every vision and dream that I want for the theater, it's shareable. I didn't realize it was going to hit me that way, but that's really what it is. I have something I want, a goal I want for the theater, and it's so shareable because you need allies, you need artists, you need designers, you need actors to build that thing. And it surprised me how that felt like. It almost felt like food. Like I was going to need that every day. Like once I knew that was surprising to me, and that was an extremely satisfying feeling, I just wanted more of that. I wanted more collaboration. How do I find new collaboration? How do I find deeper collaboration? How do you work with the person that you maybe work with 3 times, but you work with them in a very different way or deeper way? So that was the surprise of how shared the dream would be, because I started as an actor. We're used to being selfish and myopic and going, me. And so I still have some residual, certainly from that. But as a director, you become a lot more collaborative. I also write. That's also a collaborative form. And so, it's that shared thing that really surprises me, and it touches me. Like when you see something, you see a piece of the vision that you want, and you see how it's informed by somebody else's art. I know you work with writers who are writing new work, and a writer is a funny thing. Like you have this set of notes that you give them, and they will come back the next day, and every single note will be addressed, but in a very strange writer way. It won't be exactly what you asked for, but it will be attended to. And you go, how did they do that?
Yeah.
It's a strange way of doing something that I asked, that I felt was sort of black and white, but they took it and spun it, and they're like alchemists or wizards. The same thing with designers. Designers, yes, I could give somebody a design out of my head, but it's so much more just exhilarating to throw things against the wall, to show them a painting or a poem, or send them a song and go, this is the feeling. And what they generate and send back to you is the most amazing thing. And it never gets old. It's always exciting to see what you get back just by giving just tiny bits of information. Now, the information has to be on point. That's, but if you just give them, it's almost like that image of taking that paper boat and starting it on one side of the pond and pushing it. And all you do is have to do that first flick and see how far it gets to the other side. And that's what I feel like the collaboration process is for me, and always has.
Because you now, you've got an apartment on Capitol Hill in Seattle. What's your favorite part about Seattle in general, now that you're a resident here, rather than like a guest artist living in our housing in Issaquah? Now that you're able to experience the whole shebang.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just to pop out of theater for just a second, I'm a foodie. Seattle. I mean, and in my area, I can basically just sort of like close my eyes. I wouldn't do that because I wouldn't want to be hit by a car, but I could close my eyes and walk yards and just, there's a great restaurant.
You're on what,
I'm like Union
and Madison?
Yes, I'm at that sort of triangle. It's those weird like 5-point streets.
Yeah.
we only have those in the West Village in Manhattan, but it's so strange. It's like, wait a minute, how do I get across this street? You have to do like a gun in order to cross to the other side. But so there's so many restaurant venues I just love. I still don't understand the donut and ice cream fascination, especially the ice cream in the dead of winter fascination.
Donuts is a pretty, like the artisan donuts thing is pretty huge. Yeah, it's pretty unique, I guess, for the Northwest here in Portland.
And I hate to plug one of them, but the General Porpoise Donuts is like just heaven.
What is it? General Porpoise?
General Porpoise. It's a round donut that's filled instead of it's not a ring, it's a ball.
I've never
heard when it's filled. It's delicious.
Okay.
I just that was a really sad moment I just had there, because I haven't had one like 10 weeks. And also, here's the other thing I know that just reminding myself of when I was doing regional theater as an actor. For the most part, regional theaters, when I would go and fly to Dallas or fly to Florida or any of the other regional theaters around, most of the company would be made up of New Yorkers who are guest artists there. And the fascinating and wonderful thing about the Seattle theater community is most of the companies are made up of Seattleites and some guest artists. And one of the things that I recognized very, very early on in Seattle is the work ethic is just amazingly, what I want to just say, just like I was shocked. I was really shocked at how prepared people would come to day one, how the commitment to preparation, and it's not to say that I was shocked at the professionalism. It wasn't that. It was just that that's not the way it is in other regional theaters. You come first day and you were learning notes and script and all that from day one. Very few people come in almost fully off book. It was astonishing. I had a read through of a couple of shows there in the first couple of days that were just you could have paid money for it. They were so.
Yeah, I remember the first. I used to be an actor until I was like 17 or something. I did a main stage show, the main stage production of Peter Pan at Village, and Timothy Piguet was Captain Hook. Another Timothy, Lisa Esther, and Timothy was Captain Hook.
There's that chemistry thing again.
Yeah, and I remember I showed up on day one, and Timothy didn't have his script because he was completely memorized. And I was like, "Oh, that's how this is done. Okay, great."
You learn quickly.
Yeah. I learned that at like age 16 or something. Like, okay, great. Show up first day, memorized. Got it.
And what's wonderful about the Seattle actors is they don't, what they don't do, and they have every right to do it. They could give the person who's not off book or who doesn't have their stuff together the side eye. They choose not to, which I think is lovely.
Yeah.
They just know their stuff and lead by example.
Yeah. So the other thing that I love about you is you are similar to me. You see lots of theater.
Yeah.
Like all the time. And so you've been seeing lots and lots of theater here in Seattle. What are, outside of Village Theater, what are some of your favorite, the last like 2 years or so that you've been here, what are your favorite things that you have?
I love that I love that the three things that pop in my mind are all completely different, and really different forms and venues. One of them was a play, the Sound Theater Company, Reparations, and that was recent. The play was a world premiere. Just and another one was I don't quite know the genre that you would call it, so you'll have to help me out here. But it was Jingle All the Gay, and
yes.
I don't know what you call that genre, but
I think that's like Seattle cabaret.
Is that what that's? I don't know.
Like
I did not know what I was getting myself into, and I was just delighted because I think again, my reference point is not Seattle when I've seen a show like that, and I basically had an aversion to what I would say with a show like that. What was in my head when I was thinking about going?
I try to sometimes put like what is like the Seattle theater aesthetic, or like what is like the Seattle export, and one of them is like the Seattle style of cabaret, drag, burlesque conglomeration. Yeah, it's really fascinating
because I've not seen it anywhere else on the planet, really. And it's interesting because we in New York here, right down the street, a friend of mine owns a speakeasy, and they have burlesque there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And most of the very, very good artists are from Seattle. So that's the thing.
Have you seen Dina Martina yet?
I feel like I in front of me see crazy lips and crazy eyes.
Yes.
Okay.
I was like, if you have not seen Dina, I am going to have to take you to see Dina Martina.
Yeah, and I saw a wonderful little production at 12 Arts It was I guess you would call it a parody musical, Disenchanted.
Oh yeah,
About the princesses. It was really fun. That was really, really fun.
yeah. It's like all these Disney type princesses in one show,
Except they were misbehaving. Yeah. It was,
yeah.
but what I like, again, like what I like about the work is no matter what, because I don't know, I just feel like sometimes if I would go to see a cabaret show here, there might be some shenanigans that weren't really based in work and preparations. It might just be like lots of fun and, tee hee ha ha. But in each of the things that I just mentioned, the work was really great. I even saw this thing called Ms. Pac-Man.
That's another Seattle cabaret drag.
I'm like, what is this? And so wacky and so well rehearsed and so well done and so well written.
Ms. Pac-Man is one of my favorite things that I've seen in Seattle the last couple years. It's a drag queen. Scott Shoemaker is the artist, plays Ms. Pac-Man, and it's the character from the video game as a drag queen that's like a pill popping alcohol.
But what I love that at the heart of that show, the writing's so good because at the heart of the show, it's like, I didn't get my due. And so many actors feel like that, and I just love it. I love. I now know that I can walk into a venue in Seattle and go, I don't really need to know what this is. I can just go and have a really great time, and and it'll be something new for me. And because I feel like even though I wouldn't call myself a prude, I'm pretty conservative, and so when I go see things, I can be shocked. And I like that.
Well, and speaking of going to see lots of things, one thing that I think probably a lot of people don't know, I did see in the comments, one person did know because they asked this as a question, but I was planning on asking it anyway.
What is this?
Well, you are on the Tony Awards nominating committee.
Oh, that's right.
Panel committee? The nominating committee.
Nominating committee. So the way this works is the nominating committee, which is about 100 people. They see all of the shows, every show that's opening in the season, not the ones that have been running, but the new shows. They see all of them, which is around 35 to 45 per season. It's more now that a lot of small theater companies have their own Broadway theater. And then they run a full season in their Broadway house. So the committee sees all of the shows. And then the committee votes which ones will be up for nominations. So we are basically the nominating committee. We pare it down, and then the Tony voters are the ones who vote on the winner of.
There's like hundreds of those people.
And there are hundreds and hundreds of those people. And indeed, the nominators actually, by de facto, become voters. And so like I will, for instance, if something. If I saw something really early in the year and I thought, man, I would really like to take another look at that actor or that scenic design or listen to the sound or the music again, you can a nominator can go again as a voter and then just refresh their memory. It's a fascinating. First of all, it's an amazing. Yes, it is an honor, of course, but it's also an amazing privilege to see back to back all this talent at this caliber. And it's one of the things, I mean, I don't tell people what to do with their lives too much, but I have started telling people, don't tell me something on Broadway is awful, because it takes a lot to get there. You may not like it. It may not be for you, but it's not awful. There's some things going on there that you can take away and go, that was wonderful. So that's a takeaway from me. It's also a takeaway of how extremely talented this world is. Ideas wind up on stage you just can't even imagine, and you're in the business, and it still feels like magic. When you see a new idea, and you also see a tried and true old idea that just comedy of three, it just works. Bright lights and bright costumes make things funnier. It's just one of those things. if you put people in corners, you know that it's a modern take or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, there's just all these tropes that become realized and again, but then you see the new thing and you go, wow. It's amazing.
I have a couple other questions, thoughts for about the Tony nominating. But if anyone is just joining us, just to reiterate, we're here with Dixon, the artistic director here at Village Theater. We're talking about him being on the Tony Awards nominating committee, which is a really interesting thing. But we're about to get to the question and answer portion of the evening. So if anyone has questions that they have for Jerry about just about anything.
Except for they can't, well, they can ask me, but I will not answer questions on what I thought about any of the shows that I've seen thus far this year, because I'm not allowed to.
Because Jerry's not allowed to talk about the things that he likes or doesn't like, because that would be getting information that you shouldn't have. But it could be about the Tony nominations, or it could be about anything Village Theater or
last year or the year before.
Yeah, or just anything before this current season or this.
Yes. That's right.
But this Tony nominating thing is like serious deal. Like you're most of the time that you're in New York, it's for this Tony nominating stuff, and you have to like. You were explaining to me that like if you're going because you have to see one show before it closes or something, you have to go with like a little bit of time on either end in case someone's out or right.
That's right, because if there's a principal player out. You have to go back and see that show. If, or say you go to the show and there's a turntable and the turntable doesn't operate correctly, you have to go back to see that show. So you have to leave yourself buffer. So it's not just a 1 day in, 1 day out thing. It's a process. Wow. And so you have to leave yourself like, I can see book one show on Tuesday and then maybe Wednesday night and then maybe Friday and leave the days in between as buffers, just in case. Or just in case you don't feel good, right? You want to give these shows their due. So if you're feeling terrible, you should not go to that show because it's going to affect the way you view that show. Right. So I'm very careful about that. But you know the thing about our Magic Brick cell phones that's made it really great is they can actually tell you the minute before. Don't even bother showing up. So and so's out, which is great. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to repeat the process of going.
Yeah.
But it's just been amazing. Watching what's happening on Broadway.
Yeah, and you're getting the best.
I said the only downside is it doesn't give me any extra time to see off-Broadway shows.
Oh, sure.
And that's one of my biggest loves, and it's a shame, but you only have so much time in a schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now, if folks have questions, we're getting to the end of the time here, but I'm going to work my way backwards because this one is sort of general enough. From Bobby Catula, who is a wonderful Village Theater actor and staff member.
Bobby Catula, as I live and breathe.
What musical or straight play are you passionate about directing? Like, what's a dream directing show for you?
I would love to direct Mass Appeal, War Horse, Kiss of the Spider Woman. I'll just stop there.
Those two. That's fair. This is a lovely question from Iris Elton.
Oh, hi, Iris.
As a mother of budding artists, what would be your piece of advice in guiding the rising generations to finding their purpose?
Woo.
That's a big question.
It is a big question. I would say that, this is a nutshell answer, but I would say if it scares you, do it. Meaning the subject matter. Because it's easy to do what you know and what feels good. But if a subject matter scares you, write it, direct it, sing it, act it, whatever you need to do to get in there and be part of that conversation. Because sometimes when material is difficult, a great reason to do it is because you think you'll handle it better than the next person that's sitting next to you. Maybe they just won't have the thing that you have to say about it. So I say, if it scares you, grab on.
I have to go back a second because we are getting so much Warhorse love. People are like, yes, Warhorse.
Yes, Warhorse.
We love Warhorse.
Yeah. It was one of those things, again, surprising. I was in London and there was a matinee seats for Warhorse. Didn't know what I was getting into. And I just like could not believe what was happening to me. Yeah.
Here's one that you can't actually answer the real question, but we will. So what's one of the best shows you've seen, not as a nominator, that didn't get a lot of Tony love? That like you thought didn't get its due, maybe?
Oh, that's
not the stuff that you've seen as a nominator because you're not allowed to comment.
I know what it is. It's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, sure.
That one. I will just say that one got the shaft, but it didn't need.
Oh yeah, it didn't need it at all. My gosh.
But still, I need to recognize work, and it was beautiful, beautiful work. And it's a shame, and I don't know the politics behind it. But I thought that was a shame.
Yeah, it's a stunning production.
Stunning.
Absolutely.
And just daring storytelling. And not, it's just not an easy subject. And I feel, especially for, the non-Black actors in that show, that is not an easy thing to do on a daily basis. Black actors, frankly, have become, we grow calluses because we need to. But there's also something very, very difficult for the person who has to be that bigot, who has to be that angry, violent person. And I always say it costs something to all of us. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that company was extraordinary, and there were no punches pulled, and then it was just unabashedly brave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Another question from Shannon Russell. Advice for a New York actor trying to make a go of things in this particularly weird time?
Mm-hmm. To think of yourself as a global actor, because theater is happening everywhere. And yes, New York is a fantastic theater hub, but you can make theater anywhere on this planet. And so anytime you get a chance to do it somewhere, do it. That's what my advice would be for a New York actor.
Look, another question from Iris. What's the favorite place you've ever performed? That's interesting. I think this is not the city, but like the theater, like the space itself, not necessarily like, I love this town.
Oh, the space. Oh, I know. Well, I have one indoor and one outdoor, the Muni outdoor space. Mm. And then I did
where you played, I have to say, because I love it. You played King Triton.
I did.
In the Little Mermaid.
You don't know how much. Well, it brought me so much joy because my career has been doing contemporary musicals, and contemporary musicals tend to be on the smaller side. So I never got to do the big splashy Broadway musical. Not that I didn't get to do it. I didn't do it. I did other wonderful things, but not that. And I was just never so happy as to have, this wonderful costume, to have my spotlights, like that's where you stand, and then you walk away and somebody else comes on and does something. And like, I'm used to these things where I have like 37 characters. Right. So it was just a delight. And to see that sea of 10,000 audience members just watching.
Yeah, what a crazy space. Did you fly in Little Mermaid?
I did. Nobody flew in Little Mermaid. Our Mermaid was no flying, and it was spectacular.
The Heelys were like roller skates?
Nope, we did no roller skates. We did no Heelys, no flying, and it was just beautiful. We did these. It was a new technology that they were using, and it was a donut, so it was 2 turntables, and we used these large. I mean, they were like maybe 18 to 20 feet wide and maybe 9 feet tall. These amazing LED revolving rolling things that the actors could grip. And they had projections inside them.
Oh, cool!
That was the big new thing that we added to the thing. So that was an amazing place to perform. And then my next one, which is one of those, I always like the feel of guerrilla theater, where you're like, it's not a theater, and why did you put it in here? because it's, sort of random. I performed in an opera called I Was Looking at the Ceiling and Then I Saw the Sky, which was written by John Adams and June Jordan, the poet. And it was directed by opera director Peter Sellers, not the actor, not the dead actor, but the very live director. One of our venues was in Helsinki, and it was in an airplane hangar where they built part of the transatlantic cable. It was humongous. We only took maybe a 16th of a corner of the space to build it. Somebody built a set for us, built dressing rooms, built a little commissary for us to eat. And it was just amazing to actually go to rehearsal and have them building the set around us while we were staging, because they built the stage first and then started to build the audience and the dressing rooms. And so that was pretty amazing. I'll never forget that.
Wow. All right. I think we got this is our last question, because we just
make it a doozy.
The hour mark. Frank Jewett would like to know, I've been out of the business for about 14 years. Mm-hmm. What's your advice on how I get back into the business after all this time?
Can I ask what they did in the business?
I noticed in his comments earlier, he's an actor.
Oh, okay. Wow. I say communicate with people you know. And if you don't know them directly, ask somebody who does. If you can find somebody who does, get an in. If you're passionate about it, just find a way to meet people. And of course, auditioning. But I think more than that is connecting and telling people how passionate you are about re-engaging, being an actor in the theater.
Yeah, good advice. Okay, no, we have one more, because I think this is an interesting one. I talked about this a little bit last week. Mm-hmm. But what personal perspective or priorities do you bring to, obviously, this collective decision-making process when Village is deciding on a season of shows? Like, what things do you weigh? What factors do you weigh? Consider projects for the theater season.
Yeah, of course of course we weigh appeal. Like, is anybody going to come see it? Because we have to, because we know what would happen if we did not do that. But you ask yourselves, I mean, we're human, so we go, what would I enjoy? What would we collectively, Brandon and our casting director Jessica and Tim Simons, our music supervisor, and our marketers, what would they enjoy creating? We know what kind of stories we want to tell. Like, I'm very interested in telling almost everything I direct is in some way about the American family, with very few exceptions. I like those stories, and it's interesting that they can be told in many different ways. Like Heart Island is a story about one of the beta shows that we did is about an American family. The Curious Incident of the Dog is in the Nighttime. It's an American story. Showboat, an American family story. So I will bring that, because that is my passion. Part of my deficit growing up was my family. So I make up for that by telling these stories in very different configurations, because I think family means very different things. So I add that, and then Brandon might add something else, and our casting director something else. But we're all trying to put stories in front of your eyes that we would want to see, that we would connect with. So that's really the guiding principle. We also have a mission statement, which is not far from all of our guiding principles. Thank God. So that yes, it's very, very personal, but it's also collective, and we're never really at odds of like the kind of theater that we want to do. We know that we want it to be positive. We know that we want there to be growth involved in the subject matter. We know that we want people to have human experiences that expand us rather than diminish us. I love a Neil LaBute play. I mean, he's working out something. It's like we're his therapist. Yeah. He's very, very hard on his subject matter, but I never would want to put that in front of a Village Theater audience, because there is no expansion. And maybe I'm missing something in LaBute plays, and somebody can Facebook me if you want to. But for me, it's that thing. It's that thing in your gut that I want to see that, and I think people would want to see that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great way to leave this, I think.
Yeah, Neil Abute.
Yeah, with Neil Abute. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. This has been a great discussion. Some great questions. Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time. It's getting late there.
Thanks for being. Yeah. Well. Yeah, I guess so, but not really.
But thank you
in
for
the middle of my day. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. And thank everyone else for being here as well. We will have another happy hour next week.
Yeah, this is fun. Brandon, thank you so much for being a great host.
Oh, my pleasure.
One of the things I'll leave people with is that, often Brandon and the rest of us who collaborate together, we are so busy making theater that we don't necessarily get a lot of chance to just sort of tee-hee and ha-ha together. And it's just so wonderful. So
yes, I love tee-heeing and ha-haing with you. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week. Have a good week until then.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.